Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm meadsyreplays. Welcome back to the channel. The beasts are back. Yes, the Patton and the M60 have both received a buff, even though people will say it's not a big buff. I mean, a second off its reload is not normally too much of a buff, but I think for tier 10 medium tanks, a second off the reload actually makes a massive difference. It pumps the DPM up quite a bit. 3,500 DPM now for both of these tanks, and I think, you know, it's now kind of equal to the other medium tanks in tier 10, and that's where these two tanks, or mainly we'll sort of talk about the Patton, not so much the M60. They're both very similar anyway. So 3,500 DPM, it is up there now with all the other medium tanks in the game. However, it's still not the quickest. I mean, 48 kilometers per hour. It does have the gun depression, and it does have a very nice turret, and that's where this tank really shines. If you can get on a ridgeline using that 10 degrees of gun depression, yeah, you really will bounce quite a few shots in this tank, and that's where you need to play this tank. I still wouldn't go out all out attack on other medium tanks, because you haven't got the armor profile. The front plate is very weak. However, like I said, the turret on the tank is absolutely amazing. It's and that's always been the case with this tank. It's always been about the turret. And if you, like I said, if you could get yourself on a ridgeline, you now have more DPM to use on that ridgeline. And honestly, if you can get on that ridgeline, you will get bounces. Guaranteed, you will get some bounces. So even though a second off the reload it doesn't seem a lot, but honestly, for medium tanks, I think a second makes all the difference. I mean, look at the Leopard 1, for instance. About a year ago or so, it got an ever so slightly buff. I mean, not even a second off the reload, and that little buff made it the highest DPM medium tank over all the Russians, like the Object 140, the T62A, etc. And I think that's the kind of same with the Patton. And when it already had sort of a 7-second reload, coming up against medium tanks with sort of 5.5 seconds reload, it makes all the difference. It really does make all the difference. Where now you use adrenaline on this tank, then you what, 5.4 seconds reload. It obviously does have the higher alpha as well, and it has that amazing turret. It's not a great tank to go face hugging with, because if you look at it, the hull is quite high. So if you go face hugging against an Object 140 or a T62, T22, or even tanks like the 121 or the STB, those are going to be very difficult, and I think you're going to come off worse, because you go face hugging with them, you're only going to really be able to see their turret, and that's the strongest part of their tank. Where the strongest part of your tank is your turret, but you go face hugging, and that all they're going to really see is that big hole of yours. So it's definitely not a face hugging tank like some of the other mediums. So don't try and get into those face hugging positions. Literally the best thing for this tank is the ridge lines. Get on a ridge line, show your turret, because you haven't got many weak points of your turret. There's a few, obviously there's a couple, but again, you get on a ridge line, use that gun depression, wiggle your turret backwards and forwards, left and right, and 100% you will get some bounces. And now with the DPM buff, you could pick up damage even quicker than you already could. So we're going to watch a couple of games now just to show how the Patton can now perform. I mean, the Patton's always performed well with good players anyway, but now with the DPM buff, it just performs even more better. So we're going to watch this guy here. He hasn't bounced anything yet, but he is up to a 3.6k damage, and you can already see he's trying to use the ridgeline. He hasn't moved from the ridgeline, and that is how you're supposed to play it. If you have other mediums on your team, let them be the ones that goes forward and pushes, takes the attention of the enemy team, and then you could just sort of go down on the ridgelines and just farm some damage really. And as you can see there, we have the first bounce of the game, and it was from the Sheridan. So a nice bounce there. I mean, it would have been a one shot if he wouldn't have bounced that shot. So 4.3k damage now, and again, just look at it, he's using the ridgeline. He's always trying to get himself into these positions where he is using that ridgeline. But it is now a 3-on-3. The enemy, though, I mean, they got the Sheridan, who's, again, there's another bounce there. So all the other tanks, all three tanks, do have the big alpha gun, so you do need to be very careful. Even though he's still got 1,000 hit points, one shot from any one of these guys, then you're basically you're going to be a one shot. So if they shoot at the same time, you're basically going to be dead. And this is exactly how you should be playing this tank. And you can see he's always trying to get on that ridgeline. He's always using the ridgeline, because that is where you're going to get the bounces. And now the E100 is pushing. He can just track him, and again, he's not looking at pushing. There is no reason for him to push. He has this hill here, and he's just going to wait for the E100 to push him. And yes, he does get shot, but he's managed to get what, 1,000, just over 1,000 damage into this E100, so while he only gets the one shot off. And again, he's going to switch to the heat just to get the pen onto the turret, and he's just going to wait. He's not looking at running away. He's going to use the ridgeline. Hopefully he's going to try and bait the shot from the E100, and if he's pushing forward, he's just going to push back. And here comes the VK, so he does need to be careful. 69 hit points left from that VK. He's just going to turn around the corner and hopefully get the shot in, and he does just that for his first kill. And now just leaving this E100. So he held this corner pretty well, to be honest. He farmed quite a lot of damage. He's on 6.7k damage. He's now waiting for his platoon mate to go, because he can potentially take a shot, but if he doesn't take a shot, then he is actually taking the attention of this E100. And there we go, we're going to get the kill there, and 7.1k damage, 1,000 block damage. Not too much block damage, but it was important. Then block damages from the Sheridan there was really important. Still made a little bit of credits, even though he had to shoot quite a bit of heat. Next up, we have one of the most OP players on the Asian server, Sugwan, and I mean, he's a regular on the channel, always sending me replays, and every replay he sends me is pretty much OP. And you can see here again, he's on the hill. He's basically on the hill, ready to pull back and use the hill as cover if he needs to. But again, you need to pick the right hill, because it does have such a big hole. It is quite easy for the enemy to pen, so you can't go too far up the hill. And as you can see, look here, he's just using the ridge. He's using the yes, he does get penned from the Centurion and does lose a little bit of hit points, but he's not looking at moving from this ridge line. Now, if the enemy do push to the left side, he could be in a bit of trouble, but he does have all of his team with him. I mean, there's a TD in the cap, in the spawn, sorry, and there is a heavy in the cap, getting the cap, but his team are with him. And again, he gets the bounce from the FV to 4202, and he's just always using that ridge line. And that is what I love to see about this tank. People driving the tank to result. People are, that's like the FV is just sort of resulted in shooting HE. At least he does a little bit of damage to him. And here is the M103, again using that ridge line, and with the angle he does yet again get another bounce. So he's already farmed now 3.1k damage, which is a great amount of damage to farm in such a little amount of time. Two tanks are already down, and now the T92 is trying to run away. Hopefully gets a nice HE shot there, over 450 damage there, brings him to a one shot, and now he can just farm on this M103. There is, however, 3 TDs to be careful of, and not at the moment no one is spotted. So it has to be very careful at that. So just going to wait to reset his camo, and now the waffles are spotted. He can load up the HE, and now he's going to just farm some HE damage. Almost 400 damage there, even though the waffle is using the spool liner, which is pretty solid, a pretty good amount of damage. So at this point, it's a 6 versus 3. He's still got a lot of hit points remaining, so he is now going to just push forward and hopefully spot these guys. And again, once again, using this ridge line, taking taking a shot and then backing up whilst he is spotted. Now, because of that, it's going to take a little bit of aiming for these guys to be able to get the pen, and it will be a very, very difficult pen, even for the E4. The E4 has a great penetration, so I love that when people are driving this tank. And watching these two battles, these two battles just showcases how you should be playing the Patton. It is not a brawler like the T62 and the Object 140. It's not a brawler, and you're going to get things like that where people got no choice. Big guns have got no choice to shoot HG at you. Yes, they're still doing damage, but they're not doing as much damage as they would shooting AP or Pram or APCR or Heat or whatever. So at this point, is 1100 hit points. He's now managed to farm up 6,200 damage, and whilst his team are now pushing, it's basically a 6 versus 5. Now a 4 versus 3, but there are a couple of low hit point tanks. If he can clear this E4, it'll just make it a lot easier for his team. And there we go. So now just 2 tanks remaining, 2 waffles, one that is basically full hit points, and as you can see there, he does get another bounce. So I hope these 2 replays does help you guys in showing like how to play just to play the Patton. And the M60 is basically exactly the same way. It's a little bit of difference, stats, but not really too much difference. The armor profile is basically the same, DPM is basically the same, so they basically play the exact same way. So yeah, I hope these 2 guys that we've shown you today has helped you, because the Patton's not been popular. People don't like the Patton because it has been too weak, but now it has that buff. Now it has the DPM buff. It is pushing with all the other medium tanks in tier 10. So hopefully we do see a comeback of the beast. People start playing it more, and we start seeing more battles just like Sagwan here. 8,700 damage. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Get out there, get the Patton, and hopefully we'll be seeing more battles like this. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. I'm Meadsy, and I'll catch you all soon. Bye bye. With